Hello friends, welcome back to Expertly Weird. Go ahead, get comfy. The fire's crackling, the rain's whispering at the window, and the air smells like pine smoke, old books, and just a hint of divine regret. Wrap yourself in a blanket, pour something warm, tea, wine, ambrosia, I'm not here to judge, and settle in. Because tonight's story, it's juicy, it's ancient. It's what happens when you, a regular mortal with decent skincare and questionable taste in men, somehow become the side piece of a Greek god. Before you get any romantic ideas, let me be clear. This is not some toga-wrapped fantasy. This is mythological chaos. One wrong move and you're waking up cursed, immortal, or worse, a part of someone's tragic backstory on a wine jug. Tonight, we're asking the question, what if you matched with a Greek god on some ancient divine dating app and said yes? Picture this. You're scrolling through ancient Greek dating apps and suddenly you match with someone whose bio reads, "Immortal, commands the seas, owns multiple palaces on Mount Olympus." Sounds like a catch, right? Well, buckle up, because today we're diving into what your life would actually look like if you became the side piece of a Greek god. And trust me, it's not all nectar and ambrosia. Before we get started, hit that like button if you've ever wondered what divine drama looks like, and subscribe because we're about to explore some seriously mythic relationship dynamics. Drop a comment letting me know which Greek god you think would make the worst boyfriend, because honestly, the competition is fierce. Now, let's set the scene. You've somehow caught the eye of one of the 12 Olympians. Maybe Zeus noticed you while he was people-watching from his cloud throne. Or perhaps Poseidon spotted you during your beach vacation. Either way, congratulations, you're now part of the most complicated love triangle in human history. And by triangle, I mean you, the god, and their extremely powerful, extremely vengeful spouse. Let's start with the obvious choice. Zeus, king of the gods, and champion of questionable life decisions. If you become Zeus's side piece, your biggest concern isn't whether he'll text you back. It's whether Hera, his wife and queen of the gods, will turn you into a cow. And that's not a metaphor. She literally did that to Io, one of Zeus's mortal lovers. One day you're living your best life. The next you're grazing in a field while being chased by a gadfly sent by your boyfriend's wife. Talk about relationship drama. Your daily routine would be a masterclass in paranoia and disguise. Zeus would probably visit you in the form of various animals or natural phenomena because subtlety is apparently not his strong suit. One day, he's a swan. The next, he's a golden shower. Yes, that's an actual myth, and no, it's not what you think. Though honestly, it's still pretty weird. You'd never know if that bull in your garden is just livestock or your divine boyfriend trying to be romantic. The perks? Well, Zeus could give you immortality, incredible beauty, or even your own constellation when things inevitably go south. But here's the thing about divine gifts. They always come with strings attached. That immortality might mean watching everyone you've ever loved age and die while you remain frozen in time. That beauty could make you a target for other gods who want to add you to their collection. And that constellation? Well, at least you'd have a nice view of Earth from space while you contemplate your life choices for eternity. But let's say you're more of a beach person and you've caught the attention of Poseidon, god of the seas. Your relationship would literally be a whirlwind of tsunamis, earthquakes, and awkward family dinners. Poseidon's wife, Amphitrite, might not be as creatively vengeful as Hera, but she controls sea monsters. Ever been chased by a kraken? Well, you might find out. Your living situation would be interesting, to say the least. Sometimes you'd be in an underwater palace that makes Atlantis look like a studio apartment. Other times, you'd be hiding in coastal caves while Poseidon's legitimate children, who happen to be giants and sea creatures, patrol the waters looking for their father's latest romantic interest. Family dynamics get really complicated when your boyfriend's kids include the cyclopes and various sea serpents. The travel benefits would be incredible, though. Poseidon could take you anywhere in the world instantly, as long as there's water nearby. Want to see the Maldives? Done. Fancy a trip to the Caribbean? He's got you covered, but every vacation would come with the risk of encountering one of his many other lovers or their offspring. Greek gods weren't exactly known for their monogamy, even with their side pieces. Now, if you're more intellectually inclined, maybe Apollo has caught your interest. God of music, poetry, prophecy, and medicine, he seems like he'd be a cultured boyfriend. But here's the thing about dating someone who can see the future. There are no surprises, and not in a good way. He already knows how your relationship ends. He just hasn't told you yet. Plus, his track record with mortal lovers is honestly terrifying. Daphne turned herself into a tree rather than date him. A tree. That's how desperate she was to avoid his romantic advances. Your daily life with Apollo would be filled with impromptu concerts where you're the only audience member, prophecies about your future that range from cryptically useless to devastatingly specific, and medical advice that sometimes involves turning people into flowers. His idea of a romantic gesture might be composing an epic poem about your beauty, which sounds sweet until you realise it's going to be performed at every major Greek gathering for the next 1,000 years. The healthcare benefits would be unmatched though. Dating the god of medicine means never worrying about getting sick, unless of course you upset him. Then you might find yourself on the receiving end of a plague arrow. Apollo was responsible for both curing diseases and causing them, which makes for some very tense arguments. But perhaps you're drawn to the mysterious type and find yourself entangled with Hades, lord of the underworld. This relationship would give new meaning to the phrase, "it's complicated." Or actually, for starters, your boyfriend's workplace is literally the realm of the dead. Date nights would involve touring rivers of fire and meeting famous historical figures who are being eternally punished for their crimes. Romantic dinner conversations would include updates on which souls arrived that day and whether the Furies are still arguing about jurisdiction over certain sinners. The commute alone would be killer. Every time you want to see your boyfriend, you'd have to die a little bit. Not literally, but the journey to the underworld isn't exactly a pleasant stroll through the park. You'd need Hermes as your personal Uber driver, and even then, the trip involves crossing rivers of lament and passing three-headed guard dogs. Hades might seem like the most stable option since he's actually faithful to his wife Persephone, but that just means you'd be breaking up the one healthy marriage in the entire Greek pantheon. The guilt alone would be crushing, not to mention Persephone's mother, Demeter, might decide to bring about eternal winter until you back off from her daughter's husband. Your love life would literally cause global climate change. The real challenge with any of these divine relationships isn't just managing the gods' personality quirks or avoiding their spouse's wrath. It's dealing with the other gods who see you as either a pawn in their cosmic games or a threat to the natural order. Athena might decide you're a distraction from important matters and curse you with wisdom so profound it drives you insane. Aphrodite could get jealous of the attention you're receiving and make you fall in love with the most inappropriate person possible, like your boyfriend's worst enemy or a houseplant. Then there's the question of children. Greek gods were notorious for having offspring with mortals, and these demigod children rarely had peaceful lives. Your kid might inherit incredible powers, but they'd also inherit all the family drama that comes with divine DNA. They'd be constantly hunted by monsters, used as pawns in godly power struggles, and expected to go on dangerous quests before they're old enough to drive. Parent-teacher conferences would be nightmares when you have to explain why your child accidentally turned their math teacher into stone, or why they keep predicting their classmates' futures during lunch. The social dynamics would be incredibly complex too. You'd be living in a world where you're simultaneously above mortal concerns, but below divine status. Regular humans would either worship you, fear you, or try to use you to get to your godly boyfriend. Meanwhile, the other gods would see you as temporary entertainment, a curiosity, or a potential bargaining chip. You'd never quite belong anywhere, existing in a liminal space between mortal and divine society. Your mortal friends and family would probably think you've lost your mind. Try explaining to your parents that you can't make it to Sunday dinner because your boyfriend is busy preventing earthquakes, and you need to stay hidden from his wife, who commands peacocks and has a serious grudge against mortal women. Your social media would be a disaster. How do you even begin to explain your relationship status? It's complicated, doesn't begin to cover divine polyamory, and the constant threat of mythological transformation. The gifts would be incredible, but they'd come with catches that make monkey's paw wishes look straightforward. Zeus might give you a beautiful piece of jewelry that turns out to be cursed by Hera. Poseidon could offer you a palace under the sea, but fail to mention that it's right next to where he keeps his most violent sea monsters. Apollo might grant you the gift of prophecy, but prophecy in Greek mythology is always tragic, and no one ever believes you anyway. And let's be honest about the privacy situation, because it doesn't exist. The Greek gods were basically the original influencers, except instead of Instagram stories, they had epic poems and temple murals. Every detail of your relationship would become public knowledge. Bards would be singing songs about your love affair in taverns across the Mediterranean. Artists would be painting frescoes of you and your divine boyfriend on the walls of public buildings. Your most intimate moments would become the subject of pottery decorations that people use for their daily wine consumption. The paparazzi situation would be unlike anything modern celebrities face. Instead of photographers hiding in bushes, you'd have nymphs and minor spirits following you around, reporting back to whoever pays them in nectar. The muses might decide your love story is worth turning into an epic, which sounds flattering until you realise that Greek epics always involve massive amounts of suffering and usually end with someone dead or transformed into something unfortunate. Privacy laws? Non-existent. Divine privilege? Absolutely not in your favour. Your boyfriend might be able to throw lightning bolts, but that doesn't mean he's going to protect your personal information from becoming the latest gossip on Mount Olympus. The gods loved drama more than reality TV producers, and you'd be their newest show. Speaking of Mount Olympus, let's talk about the social hierarchy you'd be entering. Imagine the most exclusive country club in existence, except membership is based on divine parentage and cosmic power rather than money. You'd be the equivalent of someone's +1 who somehow ended up at the VIP table, and everyone would know it. The other gods would tolerate your presence because of who you're sleeping with, but the moment that relationship ends, you'd be persona non grata faster than you can say ambrosia. The 12 Olympians have their own complex web of alliances, rivalries, and family feuds that make Game of Thrones look like a peaceful family reunion. Your boyfriend's relationship with his siblings and parents would directly impact your safety and social standing. If Zeus is fighting with Poseidon this century and you're caught in the middle, you might find yourself being used as a bargaining chip or a way to send messages between the warring brothers. And speaking of family dynamics, let's address the elephant in the room. These gods are all related to each other in ways that would make ancestry websites crash. Zeus and Hera are siblings. Poseidon is their brother. Apollo and Artemis are twins who are also Zeus's children, with yet another lover. The family tree looks more like a family wreath, and you'd be entering a situation where your boyfriend's wife might also be his sister, and his ex-girlfriend could be his niece. Thanksgiving dinner would require a flowchart and possibly therapy. The power dynamics would be absolutely crushing. Your divine boyfriend could literally reshape reality on a whim, and you'd have no recourse if things went wrong. Feeling upset about something? Too bad. He could erase your memory of the argument. Want to break up? He could make you forget you ever wanted to leave. The concept of consent becomes incredibly murky when one person in the relationship has godlike powers and the other is just trying to survive each day without being turned into livestock. Your career prospects would be interesting, to say the least. On one hand, having a god as a boyfriend opens doors that most people can't even imagine. Need a good harvest? Your boyfriend could arrange that. Want to win a war? Divine intervention is just a pillow talk conversation away. But on the other hand, you'd never know if your successes were your own or just your boyfriend pulling strings behind the scenes. Every achievement would be questioned, every opportunity suspect. The job market for former divine concubines is pretty limited too. What exactly do you put on your resume? experienced in managing relationships with temperamental immortals, skilled in avoiding mythological transformations, fluent in ancient Greek, and capable of surviving family gatherings that include personifications of abstract concepts. Let's talk about the day-to-day logistics of dating someone who exists partially outside of time and space. Your boyfriend might pop in for a romantic evening, but then disappear for 3 months because he's busy dealing with some cosmic crisis or having a family argument that spans continents. You'd never know if he's genuinely busy preventing the apocalypse or if he's just avoiding you because things are getting too serious and he's not ready to introduce you to his father, who happens to be either a titan or a primordial force of nature. The communication issues would be legendary. Greek gods didn't exactly have cell phones, so your boyfriend's method of staying in touch might involve sending messages through dreams, omens, or interpretive dance performed by woodland creatures. You'd be constantly trying to figure out if that strange dream about eagles means he loves you, or if he's warning you that his wife has discovered your relationship and is planning something involving large birds of prey. Time zones become irrelevant when your boyfriend can travel at the speed of thought, but that doesn't make scheduling any easier. Divine time moves differently than mortal time. What feels like a weekend getaway to your boyfriend might be 3 years in mortal time, during which your friends and family assume you've disappeared or died. You'd need to maintain some kind of cover story for these extended absences, and I was kidnapped by a god typically doesn't hold up well with employers or landlords. The health insurance situation would be complicated. Sure, your boyfriend might be able to cure any disease or injury with a thought, but divine healing comes with its own risks. Apollo might cure your headache, but accidentally give you the ability to see people's deaths, which isn't exactly a fair trade. Asclepius could heal your broken bone, but decide that as payment, you now owe him a favour that might involve helping him steal someone else's soul. Divine medicine always has side effects that make pharmaceutical commercials look optimistic. Your diet would undergo some serious changes too. Forget about your favourite restaurants or comfort foods. When you're dining with gods, everything becomes symbolic and ritualistic. That bowl of soup isn't just soup, it's a representation of the eternal cycle of life and death, and you'd better appreciate the metaphor or risk offending someone who controls natural disasters. Ambrosia and nectar might be the food of the gods, but they're also addictive substances that can make mortals dependent on divine approval for their basic nutritional needs. The fashion expectations would be exhausting. Gods have very specific ideas about how their lovers should present themselves, and these ideas rarely take into account comfort or practicality. You might find yourself wearing robes made from woven moonlight or jewellery crafted from crystallized music, which sounds magical until you realise that moonlight robes offer zero protection against actual weather, and music jewellery has a tendency to play at inappropriate moments. Your mortal lifespan would become a constant source of anxiety for both you and your divine boyfriend. Gods experience time differently, so what feels like a meaningful relationship to you might feel like a brief summer fling to them. They might genuinely care about you, but their concept of forever is literally eternal, while yours is measured in decades. This creates a fundamental incompatibility that no amount of divine power can fix. The existential questions would keep you awake at night. Are you actually special, or are you just the latest in a very long line of mortal diversions? Do you matter to your boyfriend as an individual, or are you just a pleasant distraction from the responsibilities of cosmic governance? When he says he loves you, does he mean it the way mortals understand love? Or is it more like how you might feel affection for a particularly entertaining pet? And then there's the question of what happens when the relationship inevitably ends. Greek gods weren't known for their gentle breakups. You might get lucky and just be forgotten, left to live out your mortal life with some incredible stories that no one will believe. Or you might be transformed into something symbolic of your relationship, like a tree that blooms with flowers the colour of your tears, or a star that appears only during the season when you first met. The worst case scenario involves becoming a cautionary tale, Your story might be told for thousands of years as a warning about the dangers of getting involved with divine beings. Generations of mortals would learn about your mistakes in school, and your name would become synonymous with poor judgment and divine retribution. That's not exactly the legacy most people are hoping for when they start a relationship. But let's say you've made peace with the potential for eternal embarrassment, and you're still committed to this divine romance. The legal implications alone would give modern lawyers nightmares. What happens when your boyfriend decides to smite someone who insulted you? Are you an accessory to divine murder? When Poseidon causes a tsunami because someone at the beach was rude to you, do you bear any responsibility for the resulting property damage? The concept of divine justice is very different from mortal law. Your boyfriend might think he's being protective by turning your ex into a pig, but you'd have to live with the knowledge that someone you once cared about is now rolling around in mud because of your current relationship. The guilt would be overwhelming, especially since there's no court of appeals for divine transformations. Your tax situation would be absolutely bonkers. How do you report income when your boyfriend pays you in blessings, magical items, and the occasional minor godhood? The IRS has forms for a lot of things, but divine compensation services isn't one of them. You for romantic need an accountant who specialises in mythological economics, and good luck finding one of those in the yellow pages. Property ownership becomes incredibly complicated when your boyfriend can create islands, palaces, and entire dimensions with a snap of his fingers. Is that beach house he made for you considered a gift? What's the property value of a mansion that exists partially in another realm? Who handles the homeowner's insurance when your house might occasionally phase out of reality because your boyfriend got distracted during a family meeting? The education system would be a nightmare for any children you might have together. Where exactly do you enroll a kid who can control the weather or speak to animals? Regular schools aren't equipped to handle students who might accidentally summon lightning during math class, or whose show-and-tell presentation involves bringing their pet hydra. Homeschooling seems option until you realise you'd like the safer to be teaching subjects like advanced mythology, your extended family edition, and practical ethics. When is it okay to turn mortals into houseplants? Your social circle would shrink dramatically. Mortal friends would either become uncomfortable with your divine connections or try to use you for favours. Meanwhile, making friends with other divine mistresses would be like joining a support group where everyone's trauma involves different forms of mythological transformation. The conversations would be surreal. Oh, you got turned into a constellation? That's rough. I became a river for 3 centuries. At least rivers are useful. I spent 2 decades as a particularly melodramatic echo. You think that's bad? My boyfriend's wife turned me into a spider, and now I have an uncontrollable urge to weave tapestries depicting my own suffering. The networking opportunities would be incredible, though. Your boyfriend's family connections could open doors across the entire cosmos. Need to get a message to someone in another pantheon? Zeus probably knows a guy. Want to negotiate a business deal with some nature spirits? Poseidon's got contacts in every body of water on Earth. But every favour would come with strings attached, and those strings are usually made from the tears of your boyfriend's previous lovers. Let's talk about the religious implications of your situation. Depending on your boyfriend's domain, you might find yourself becoming an accidental religious figure. People might start praying to you for intercession with your divine partner. Imagine trying to live a normal life while random strangers approach you asking for help with their crops, their love lives, or their ongoing vendettas against sea creatures. The responsibility would be crushing. When someone prays to you because they think you can influence your boyfriend to send rain for their drought-stricken fields, what do you do? If you ask and he says no, those people might starve. If you don't ask at all, you're ignoring the suffering of mortals who believe you have the power to help them. Either way, you're complicit in the outcome. Your mental health would deteriorate rapidly without proper support systems. Therapy would be complicated because what therapist is qualified to help someone process relationship trauma involving literal gods? The few who might understand would probably be oracles or priests, but they'd have their own agendas and conflicts of interest. So tell me about your relationship with your father. Which one? My mortal father, who disowned me when I started dating a god, or my boyfriend, who's technically everyone's father figure and has serious authority issues stemming from eating his own children? Let's unpack that. When you say eating his own children, I meant that metaphorically. Well, mostly metaphorically. It's complicated. The support groups would be limited too. There aren't many people who can relate to the experience of dating someone who predates human civilization and has the emotional maturity of a particularly dramatic teenager, despite being thousands of years old. You'd be dealing with trauma that hasn't been properly studied or categorized because the sample size is so small. Your relationship with technology would become weird. Your boyfriend might find modern inventions amusing or threatening, depending on his personality and domain. Apollo might love social media because it lets him broadcast his opinions to millions of people instantly, but he'd probably get into flame wars with mortals who don't appreciate his poetry. Poseidon might hate smartphones because they interfere with his ability to communicate through ocean sounds and whale songs. The generational gap would be more like a generational chasm. Your boyfriend's cultural references would come from civilizations that existed before recorded history. His idea of a throwback Thursday would involve reminiscing about the good old days when humans sacrificed bulls instead of just posting pictures of their breakfast. You'd constantly be explaining modern concepts to someone whose last serious relationship was with Helen of Troy. No, TikTok isn't a new form of divination. People just like watching short videos. But why are they dancing? Is it a ritual? Are they trying to appease some new god I haven't met? It's just for fun. Entertainment. You know, like how mortals used to gather in amphitheatres to watch plays. Ah yes, plays. I remember when Dionysus invented those. Good times. Much more sophisticated than this TikTok nonsense. The cultural differences would extend beyond technology. Your boyfriend's concept of appropriate gift-giving might involve things like the ability to understand the language of birds or immortality, but only on Tuesdays. Meanwhile, you're just hoping he remembers your birthday without needing to consult an oracle or check the alignment of celestial bodies. Holiday celebrations would be interesting. Imagine trying to explain Christmas to someone who was around when the winter solstice was just another day for humans to huddle around fires and hope they didn't die of exposure. Your boyfriend might want to celebrate holidays from his own era, which could involve sacrificing goats or reenacting famous battles between primordial forces of nature. The pressure to be historically significant would be constant. You're not just dating any random person. You're involved with a figure who shapes the course of human civilization. Every conversation you have, every decision you make, could potentially influence events that affect thousands of people. What if you convince your boyfriend to change his mind about sending that storm? What if your casual comment about mortal politics leads to him interfering in a war? You'd be living with the knowledge that historians might someday analyze your relationship in academic papers. Future scholars would debate whether your influence on your divine boyfriend was positive or negative for human development. Your pillow talk could become the subject of doctoral dissertations. In her groundbreaking thesis, Professor Johnson argues that the unnamed mortal lover of Apollo was responsible for the 3-week period in 847 BCE when all poetry was inexplicably written in limerick form. Your privacy would be violated not just by contemporary gossips, but by future archaeologists. Someday, someone might dig up artifacts from your relationship and display them in museums. Imagine tourists looking at pottery depicting your most intimate moments, while a tour guide explains the historical significance of your boyfriend's dating preferences. The environmental impact of your relationship would be substantial. Gods aren't exactly known for their carbon footprint awareness. When your boyfriend travels to see you, he might cause weather phenomena that affect global climate patterns. That romantic gesture where Poseidon parts the sea so you can walk across the ocean floor. That's going to mess with tidal patterns for months. Your boyfriend's mood swings would have geological consequences. If you have a fight, there might be earthquakes. If he's feeling romantic, there could be unexpected volcanic eruptions that create new islands. Your relationship status would literally reshape the physical world, which adds a whole new level of pressure to every argument. Honey, I know you're upset, but could you please stop making the mountains tremble? The villagers are starting to panic. I'm not doing it on purpose. You know I can't control these things when I'm emotional. Maybe we should take a break until you calm down. The last time you got this worked up, you accidentally created the Grand Canyon. The ecological disruption would be massive. Your boyfriend might decide to show off by making flowers bloom out of season or causing rivers to run backwards. These might seem like romantic gestures, but they'd completely disrupt migration patterns, food chains, and natural cycles that have existed for millennia. Wildlife would react unpredictably to your presence. Animals can sense divine energy, so you might find yourself constantly surrounded by confused creatures trying to figure out why you smell like their creator. Birds might follow you around expecting divine wisdom, while predators might avoid you entirely, disrupting the natural balance of whatever ecosystem you're trying to live in. Your carbon footprint would be impossible to calculate. How do you measure the environmental impact of dating someone who can travel through dimensions, create matter from nothing, and occasionally rearrange the fundamental forces of nature as a party trick? You'd need an environmental impact assessment team that specializes in mythological relationships, and those are surprisingly hard to find. The insurance implications would be staggering. No company would want to cover someone whose romantic life could trigger natural disasters. Your premiums would be astronomical, assuming you could find coverage at all. The fine print would include exclusions for acts of God that would encompass basically everything your boyfriend might do on any given day. I'm sorry, Mom, but your claim for lightning damage to your house is denied. Our records show you're romantically involved with Zeus, which means this falls under our consequences of divine relationships exclusion. But he wasn't even trying to hit my house. He was just excited about our anniversary. Nevertheless, the policy clearly states that any property damage resulting from your partner's emotional expressions is not covered. Have you considered dating someone with less cosmic power? Your career options would be severely limited by the constant threat of divine intervention. Imagine trying to work in customer service when your boyfriend might smite rude customers before you can de-escalate the situation. Your performance reviews would include notes like excellent problem-solving skills and needs to work on preventing boyfriend from turning difficult clients into houseplants. The entertainment industry would be completely off limits. Hollywood would love to make a movie about your life, but your boyfriend would probably object to being portrayed by some mortal actor who can't actually control lightning or create tidal waves on command. Plus, the legal team would have nightmares trying to get permission from someone whose legal name predates the invention of surnames and whose current address is various locations across the cosmos. Your social media presence would be a constant source of drama. Every post would be analysed by mythology enthusiasts looking for hidden meanings. That innocent selfie at the beach, clearly a coded message about your relationship with Poseidon. That picture of your breakfast, obviously symbolic of your role in the eternal cycle of harvest and renewal. You couldn't post anything without someone writing a 1,000-word analysis about its mythological significance. The verification process alone would be impossible. How do you prove your identity when your boyfriend could literally create fake identification documents that are more real than real ones? Twitter's blue checkmark system wasn't designed to handle accounts belonging to the romantic partners of beings who existed before the concept of documentation. Your DMs would be flooded with messages from people asking for divine intervention in their personal lives. College students wanting help passing exams would message you hoping you'd put in a good word with Athena. Farmers facing drought would beg you to ask your boyfriend to send rain. Musicians would want Apollo to notice their SoundCloud. You'd become an unwilling customer service representative for divine services. The influencer lifestyle would be unavoidable, but the brand partnerships would be surreal. What company wants to sponsor someone whose boyfriend might accidentally destroy their product during a mood swing? Energy drink companies might be interested, since you'd need supernatural stamina to keep up with divine drama, but the liability insurance would cost more than their entire marketing budget. Your workout routine would be dictated by the need to survive increasingly dramatic scenarios. Regular cardio wouldn't be enough when you might need to outrun mythological creatures or climb Mount Olympus on short notice. You'd need specialized training in areas like escaping from jealous goddesses, surviving family dinners with personified concepts, and maintaining dignity while being transformed into various objects. The gym membership fees would be astronomical once they realized your workout needs include resistance training for avoiding divine retribution and flexibility training for navigating politically complex pantheon relationships. Personal trainers would refuse to work with you once they learned that your fitness goals include surviving apocalyptic family arguments and looking good while fleeing from mythological monsters. Your sleep schedule would be completely disrupted. Gods don't operate on human circadian rhythms, so your boyfriend might want to have deep philosophical conversations at 3 a.m. or decide that sunrise is the perfect time for an impromptu trip to visit his cousins in another dimension. Sleep aids wouldn't help when the person keeping you awake has control over dreams and nightmares. The bedroom situation would be complicated by the fact that your boyfriend's emotional state affects reality itself. Passionate moments might literally set things on fire, while arguments could cause temporary rifts in space-time. You'd need flame-retardant sheets and furniture that's anchored to the dimensional fabric of reality. Interior decorating would require consultation with physicists and mythologists. Your neighbours would hate you. Property values would plummet once word got out that the person next door is dating someone who occasionally receives visits from 3-headed dogs, or whose family reunions involve actual thunder and lightning. The Homeowners Association would have no idea how to handle complaints about excessive divine activity or inappropriate summoning of mythological creatures in residential areas. Noise complaints would be a constant issue. When your boyfriend's siblings drop by for visits, the conversations tend to involve a lot of yelling, occasional earthquakes, and the sounds of cosmic forces being rearranged. Your local police department would get tired of responding to calls about suspicious supernatural activity, only to find out it's just your boyfriend arguing with his father about who gets to control which aspect of natural disasters. The mail situation would be surreal. Your postman would quit after the 3rd time a message from Mount Olympus arrived via Golden Eagle or Flaming Chariot. Package deliveries would be impossible when your address occasionally shifts between dimensional planes depending on your boyfriend's mood. You'd need to maintain multiple forwarding addresses across different realms of existence. Your phone bill would include charges for interdimensional roaming that telecommunications companies haven't figured out how to calculate yet. When your boyfriend calls you from the underworld or from inside a lightning storm, the connection fees alone would bankrupt most people. Customer service representatives would hang up when you try to explain why your data usage includes mythological messaging services and divine video calls. Banking would become a nightmare. How do you explain direct deposits from Lord of the Seas or God of Thunder to your financial institution? The IRS would flag your account for unusual activity, and money laundering investigators would have no idea how to categorize income from divine romance services. Your credit score would be impossible to calculate when your assets include immortal boyfriend's favor and potential constellation naming rights. The legal system would have no framework for handling your situation. If your boyfriend accidentally destroys someone's property while visiting you, who's liable? When his family disputes spill over into the mortal world and cause collateral damage, are you responsible for warning people? The concept of divine immunity hasn't been tested in modern courts, and you'd probably become the test case. Your will and testament would read like fantasy fiction. How do you bequeath items that exist partially outside of normal reality? What happens to gifts from gods when you die? Do enchanted objects go back to their creators, or do they become family heirlooms that your descendants have to figure out how to handle? Your lawyer would need specialized training in mythological property law. The medical system would be baffled by your health records. Your doctor would have no idea how to treat someone who's been exposed to divine energy on a regular basis. Blood tests would come back with results that don't match any known human parameters. Your medical history would include entries like temporary transformation into various flora and fauna, and survived exposure to concentrated cosmic forces. Prescription medications would interact unpredictably with the divine energy you're constantly exposed to. Pain relievers might not work because your boyfriend's presence accelerates your healing, but they might also cause unexpected side effects when combined with residual magic in your system. Your pharmacist would need a degree in both chemistry and applied mythology. Mental health treatment would be nearly impossible to find. What therapist is qualified to help someone process trauma involving actual gods? The few professionals who might understand would probably be so fascinated by your situation that they'd be more interested in writing research papers than actually helping you cope. Support groups would be limited to other mythological figures, and their problems would make yours seem quaint by comparison. Your family relationships would deteriorate rapidly. How do you maintain normal connections with mortal relatives when your life involves regular visits from beings who predate their entire civilization? Family gatherings would be awkward when you have to explain why you can't bring your boyfriend to dinner and why there are occasionally natural disasters that coincide with your relationship milestones. Your parents would struggle to understand your life choices. They raised you to find a nice stable partner with a good job and realistic life goals, not someone whose resume includes created the ocean and invented music. Their advice about relationships would be completely useless when applied to divine beings who operate according to different moral and temporal frameworks. Holiday celebrations would become elaborate negotiations between mortal traditions and divine expectations. Your boyfriend might want to celebrate ancient festivals that involve sacrificing livestock or reenacting primordial battles between order and chaos. Meanwhile, your family just wants to know if he'll be coming to Christmas dinner and whether they need to prepare for any supernatural dietary restrictions. The gift exchange situation would be impossible to balance. Your boyfriend's presents would make everyone else's offerings look pathetic by comparison. When someone gives you the ability to speak with dolphins or your own personal rainbow, how do you reciprocate with something from a mortal budget? Your family would feel inadequate, and you'd feel guilty about the disparity in gift-giving capabilities. Your childhood friends would gradually disappear from your life as the gap between your experiences becomes too vast to bridge. They'd be dealing with normal problems like student loans and bad dates, while you're managing the political implications of divine romance and trying not to accidentally influence historical events. The conversation topics would have no overlap. Dating advice from friends would be completely useless and occasionally dangerous. When your bestie suggests playing hard to get, she doesn't realise that your boyfriend might interpret that as a personal challenge and respond by flooding her hometown or turning her into a tree. Normal relationship strategies don't apply when your partner has the emotional regulation skills of a cosmic toddler and unlimited power to act on impulses. Your professional reputation would be permanently tied to your personal life in ways that would make other people's workplace gossip seem trivial. Colleagues would either treat you with excessive deference because they're afraid of offending someone with divine connections, or they'd become hostile because they assume you're getting unfair advantages. Either way, your actual job performance would become secondary to the mythology surrounding your relationship status. The networking events you'd be expected to attend would make corporate mixers look like casual coffee dates. Divine social gatherings involve beings who've been holding grudges since before humans discovered fire. You'd need to remember which gods are currently feuding, who's allied with whom this century, and which topics are absolutely forbidden to mention unless you want to witness an impromptu war between personified natural forces. Small talk becomes an art form when everyone at the party has lived through multiple apocalyptic events and remembers when continents were arranged differently. Your conversation starters would need to avoid sensitive subjects like, "Remember when you accidentally created that species of monster," or "How's your relationship with your father, who may or may not have tried to eat you at birth?" The dress code for these events would be impossible to navigate. What do you wear to a gathering where some attendees are literal embodiments of concepts like justice or victory? Your outfit needs to be respectful enough for ancient beings who predate fashion, impressive enough to avoid looking like servant staff, but not so elaborate that you upstage someone who controls fundamental forces of nature and has a reputation for dramatic overreactions. Your +1 status would be precarious at every event. You'd be introduced as Zeus's current mortal companion, or that human Poseidon's been seeing, which immediately establishes your place in the social hierarchy. Everyone would know you're temporary, replaceable, and probably doomed to some form of mythological transformation before the relationship runs its course. The political implications of your attendance would be staggering. Which gods you're seen talking to, where you sit during formal dinners, and whether you laugh at someone's jokes could all be interpreted as your boyfriend taking sides in cosmic disputes. You'd accidentally trigger diplomatic incidents just by accepting a glass of wine from the wrong minor deity. Your dietary restrictions would multiply exponentially. It's not just about avoiding foods that might be blessed by rival gods or cursed by your boyfriend's enemies. You'd need to consider which fruits are sacred to which deities, whether accepting bread from certain sources implies political allegiances, and if drinking water from particular springs might bind you to oaths you don't understand. The entertainment at these gatherings would be beyond anything mortals could imagine, but also deeply uncomfortable for someone trying to maintain ethical standards. When the evening's amusement involves watching historical figures being eternally punished for their crimes, or witnessing the creation and destruction of entire species for artistic purposes, you'd struggle with the moral implications of applauding. Your bathroom breaks would become strategic military operations. Divine gatherings don't have normal restroom facilities because most of the attendees don't technically need them. You'd have to plan your biological needs around the event schedule while being escorted by minor spirits who find mortal bodily functions either hilarious or disgusting. So there you have it. Being a Greek god's sidepiece might sound glamorous in theory, but the reality is a cocktail of paranoia, jealousy, and family feuds that can literally split the earth open. You're not just risking heartbreak, you're risking earthquakes, floods, and the occasional spontaneous transformation into a laurel tree. You'd be trading your privacy, your sanity, and quite possibly your original species for a relationship that's destined to end with you either forgotten, immortalized in pottery as a tragic cautionary tale, or stuck explaining to tourists why you're now a constellation. Take it from me, mortals may ghost you, but at least they don't summon actual ghosts or turn your rebound into a swan. So maybe swipe left on the divine bad boys and stick to someone whose worst breakup move is blocking your number, not striking you down with a lightning bolt because you didn't text back fast enough. Until next time, stay cozy, stay curious, and for the love of ambrosia, date responsibly.